So I want to welcome Sue and Clive to the podcast, and they are our first guests. Christy's here with me to join in the conversation as well. I'm Andrew, and we are going to have a conversation about Sue and Clive, hear a bit about their story and some of the things that they're involved in. So hello, Sue.
Good morning, Andrew. Nice to see you.
And hello, Clive.
Hi, Andrew. Nice to see you too.
And we're in the same house, Sue and Clive are anyway. They are in different rooms, but on different streams, but in the same house. And you both live together. You're both partners, husband and wife.
Yeah. We're husband and wife, and we've got two children, Harriet and Seb. And to our absolute astonishment, they're 16 now. So yeah. And Harriet and Seb were born not long after we moved to Cumbria, so they've had a lovely life in Cumbria, and it's probably one of the reasons we moved here, because we wanted to start a family, and it's a great place for that, I have to say. Fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Christy, I think you got children as well, around about the same age.
So George is also 16. So George was 16 in September. So when's their birthday? Is it?
They'll be 17 in February, so we've got the learning to drive as the next big milestone, which is hard to believe. But and being twins, we've got double everything all happening at the same time. So George is just 16, is he, or is he?
Yeah, he's in his GCSE year, so you're
right.
Their A levels.
Yeah, they're in year 13. Yeah.
Unfortunately, mine are a bit younger, unfortunately. 5, 3 and 0. But I understand you've also just moved house in the last couple of months as well.
Yeah, when we first, not the first house we moved in when we moved to Cumbria, but when Harriet and Seb were on their way, we were lucky enough to get hold of a big old rundown house with a bit of land. And that was great for kids. So we had a donkey that was brilliant. And the donkey loved me but hated everybody else. I think he kicked Seb, he bit Mom, and he chased Harriet. But he used to come up and give me quite a bit of love. But and then we had a little pony. But of course, all of that is when kids are 4, 5, 6, 7. You know what I mean? But now they're 16. It's we don't want that now. We want to move a bit where there's a bit more life. So we moved from a village that was very rural to another village, but to us it's like a town. You know, it's great. There's lots of things going on. So
we were living the dream, weren't we? Really, when we moved to our previous village, because it was very remote, and we had Tommy the donkey, and we had him from a baby. And we put him in this little stable, and when the kids were like 2 or 3, and we'd look at the star above the stable, and the donkey's in there. It was just like, but it didn't last. He soon became quite aggressive. But it was. We were living the dream. But now we've moved for a bit more life, really. There's a lot more going on in Moreland. There's lots of children. There's the school, and obviously the church here is really vibrant as well, which is good. So it's great, and the house isn't drafty and old.
Great. And just to help us understand a bit of your background as well together, how did you both meet? Tell us a little bit about your love story.
Wow. We met in the Midlands. It's not very romantic, is it? We met in Droitwich. We were both working for MENCAP, Royal Society for Handicapped Children, Adults as it was then. So MENCAP, and we met at work, and we both had quite senior positions within MENCAP and were quite happy, and Clive decided to apply for a position up in Cumbria. We weren't married or anything then, and he said, do you want to move up with me? And I'm thinking, because at the time I was into, shopping and nightclubs and all that jazz. And I hadn't come to faith then either. I think I was quite a different person, really. But anyway, so we moved up to Cumbria, and it was a bit of a shock, wasn't it, Clive? Real shock to the system.
Well, I loved the move, because one of my pride and joys at the time, as well as obviously Sue, was an old 1959 Land Rover, and it looked just dead out of place in Droitwich. But of course, when we drove it up the motorway at about 40 miles an hour all the way from the Midlands, and as soon as it hit the little lanes in Cumbria, it was at home. And I was at home, and we rented a little place that was an old cow house in Sedbergh. And it literally was. It was lovely. It was all renovated, but just outside of the house, there were loads of cows trying to get in every day. You know what I mean? And it was, but it was just beautiful, wasn't it? And with the Land Rover and Sue, and a new life in Cumbria, it worked well. It was good.
Yeah, it was. It was a shock. I remember the very first night saying to Clive, I can't see my hand in front of my face, because we're just so used to light pollution living in, it was just weird. But yeah, it's great. And we've never looked back. Cumbria is a fantastic place to bring up a family. And the connections and the relationships we've made, I think it's been fantastic. It feels definitely it's home now. I know we've only been here 1996, was it? So that's so we're probably still off-comers, but we think of it as home, definitely.
Do you feel like Cumbria has changed you as a person then, Sue?
I think it probably has, to take a much more slower pace of life, and that friendship, and I think it has. There's a lot more space, there's a lot more time to think and be present, and I think that's helped. But it's, I think Cumbria's great, and as I said, it just definitely feels like home now, definitely.
And you were saying as well that you hadn't come to faith. So do you want to tell us a little bit of the story about how that happened? Yeah,
well, it kind of all seemed to happen all at once, really. I guess as a child, I was, my mum and dad, they came from quite a rural background, and they, my mum would go to chapel and things like that. And I've still got the picture of her holding her Bible on her wedding day and things like that. But really, as an adolescent, I was really quite, I was probably even more than agnostic. I was probably, by the time I got to uni, I was probably quite an atheist, really. I'd done my politics degree, and I was really, thought I knew what everything was about. And then I met somebody actually at work who was a pastor, and we just started talking about things, really, and about, he obviously was a Christian and had come to faith, etc. And then a number of things happened. Clive and I lost a baby. I lost my dad all around the same time. And people started praying for me, and I thought, well, that's all very well, but, and then over time, it was almost like, the only way I can describe it is like, for me, it was like tuning into a radio station. I suddenly somehow just got it. I mean, I'm still not the most, in terms of scripture, I can't recite the Bible. I dip in sort of most days if I can, but I'm not certainly know my scripture. But it was almost as if I got it and I understood. And I always remember a friend of mine at university who was a Christian. She went out to Zimbabwe to do some missionary work with her husband, and she said to me, "Sue, one day you will come to faith and you will know God." And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then after that, I asked to be, because I hadn't been baptised as a child because I was living in Australia at the time. So I asked if I could be confirmed, and so I was confirmed at the age of 30. Was I 35, something like that, in a church in Cumbria. And I haven't looked back since, really. I think my faith is still growing. And I still don't have all the answers, obviously, but I feel like I get it. I know I get it. I think that's the main thing.
Mm. And how about yourself, Clive, in terms of going along and being with Sue in this journey as well? How has your journey progressed?
Oh, my journey is a strange one for me, because I sort of it's weird. I mean, I sort of believe very much that I've never actually made a decision. That's a weird thing to say, isn't it? But for me, and it goes back to, it always goes back to people, when I meet people at parties and things like that, they say, like, what do you do? And I hate that question because it's a really difficult question to answer, because what I do is quite a lot of things with the couple of charities I run. But where I started from really was I wanted to be an architect. That was my plan. And I left school and I went to college and I was going to be an architect. And then things started to happen, really. I was invited to go and do some summer work in a children's home. And I did that and really liked it. And then somebody there said, my partner works in a home for adolescent teenagers, and do you want to go and do some work there? And I thought, yeah, that's all right. So I went there and did that. And then someone said, there's a job going, working with people with learning disabilities. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go and do that. So I went and did that. And then I was working there, and the guy who runs it, I was having a conversation with him one day, and he said, oh, if you want my job in the future, you have to do your training. And I said, well, where did you do yours? And he said, Southampton. And within 2 months, I was in Southampton doing my nurse training. And then it's weird, because then what happened then was, part of the training that you do for 3 years, you do various placements, not only in the hospital, but also in the community. And there was a place in Lyndhurst in the New Forest, which was a home for people with learning disabilities. And I went there for 3-month placement and loved it. I didn't think anything more about it. And then I just finished my training, and the guy who runs that place phoned up and said, Clive, we've got a job. Do you want it? So I went and did that, And then MenCat was setting up their first home for people with learning disabilities in Southampton. And the people from Lyndhurst, the people with learning disabilities, were going to move to this new home, or some of them were. And MenCat phoned me up and said, do you want to come and run this house? All right, then. So I went and ran that house. And then MenCat phoned me up again and said, we're doing some developments in Salisbury. Do you want to come and run those and develop stuff there? All right, then. So I went and did that. And then they phoned me up again and said, we've got some problems in Birmingham. Do you want to come and run some stuff in Birmingham? All right. So I went and did that. And then I met Sue. And then I remember one day just opening a magazine, and in there was a job in Cumbria, working for a charity called Oakley Trust, which was small. It was in the south of Cumbria for people with learning disabilities, had a few homes. So I thought, I'll have a go. So I was sent off a letter, and next thing I know, they're offering me the job. And that's when I met Sue and said, do you fancy coming to Cumbria? And then we ended up in Cumbria. And then these organisations have grown. Oakley was, I think it had 500,000 turnover and small staff. It's now 9 million, and across the north of England. And we developed another company as well, another charity to support people into work and training. So Oakley does lots of care and support. So I've done that. I met Sue along the way, but I felt like I never, ever got to be an architect. You know what I mean? That was my plan. But I was just taken off at a different tangent. And then the path was kind of, I don't know, given to me or steered to me. I was in this groove that led me to where I am now. So, that whole thing about, the next question is, well, what makes you do what you do? And my answer to that is, I really don't know. It just has gone in that groove, and I love it. I don't feel I've ever worked a day because it's just been a way of life. But actually, I wouldn't have it any other way. So it's worked really well, and it's just been a flow of stuff,
I was going to say, the words that came to my mind was, you're a person who goes with the flow. Things kind of open up and you think, all right, I'll try that. Do you feel that, is that all just coincidence, or is there some guiding principle in there, or?
The good thing about sort of having a belief, which I do, is that actually I don't worry. Because I mean, the work that I do, I mean, we've got somewhere in total about 500 staff and lots of people with lots of problems. And my job tends to be, if the problem gets to me, it's a big one. Do you know what I mean? But I don't ever worry about it because I know there's always an answer that will come to me. And often it comes to me the next day. And I will have a problem and I think, you know, that whole thing about sleep on it. Well, literally I do. I always wake up in the middle of the night. That's what happens. But come the next morning, I'll always have the answer. And that's kind of, so I've got that faith always behind me. So I'm really lucky and fortunate that I feel like I'm being watched over and guided all the time. I'm a little bit unhappy because I never got to be my architect, but you know, that was obviously not the plan.
You were not meant to be.
Not meant to be. I'd have probably been a rubbish architect, I have to say. I don't know how good I am at what I do, but it's certainly not been a choice I made. But I wouldn't have it any other way. Nice one. That's what I say.
Yeah. And so you're both now working for the Oakley Trust and in different ways. And I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about the roles you have and a little bit maybe more about what you do in this area in the north, because it is quite an expansive area that you cover.
Well, I think for people that don't know Oakley Trust, as Clive said, I won't give you the whole history, but basically it did start off as a charity for people with learning disabilities. And then since we've got involved, really, what we've, for me anyway, and I think Clive would agree, is what we've tried to do is go where there's a need. So don't do something where there isn't a need. If there's a gap or there's a need, there's demand, let's go for it. So we now work with, which for me is again an expression of faith, really, the people we work with. We work with the lonely, we work with the bereaved, we work with the disabled, we work with those facing poverty or living in poor living conditions. We work with people with mental health. We work with disaffected families and children that are perhaps struggling to find a place in their local community. So we work with a range of different groups, really. And as an organisation, I think, Clive, it's fair to say we've tried to shape it to be different from perhaps the usual sort of care provider. For example, we've got a workplace behaviour for our staff, and we've got a number of them, but the top one is be kind. And that for me is, you know, love your neighbour, love God, and at the heart of what we do, just be kind. And I think if we can get our employees to, if nothing else, but be kind, that goes a long, long way. So with regards to my role, I oversee all the operations. So I oversee the care and support and the right to work company as well, which, as Clive said, is more about community and about employment. So on a day-to-day basis, every day is different, but I oversee regional managers. We develop new businesses and new projects. We've got a number of things going on at the moment. We've got an exciting new project. This isn't a pitch, by the way. We've got a new project called Youth Futures, which we're really excited about. And we've got something called Learning to Live, which is in Windermere, which is going to be an alternative to residential college where people can learn independent skills and then get support into work. So it's great. As Clive said, we're really lucky. We're really living out our faith. And, you know, ubi caritas, where charity and love God is found. You know, I really feel by doing charitable work, I feel like I'm being able to express my faith in a really positive way. That's my role.
Yeah.
Clive, do you want to briefly talk about your role?
Yeah, I do all that. No, my role is I'm the chief exec of both companies. So I guess the book stops with me, but in a sense, I have really fantastic people that work for me. So and I meet with these guys regularly, and what happens is decisions that we make are not solely mine; they never are. It's a total joint approach. I also meet with our employees directly on the front line and stuff like that. So people often say we're a bit of a family organisation. I think we are, you know, and there's a very, very nice culture. Like any organisation, we sometimes, you know, we have our problems, but on the whole, I have to say it's an absolute joy. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. So what I do is, you know, everything I actually line manage Sue, which is weird, husband and wife line managing one another. But it has never ever been a problem. It's been a joy. So I can support Sue. Sue comes up with some ideas, and you know, we put them together between us, and vice versa. You know, so it works really, really well.
Sue, do you agree with that? It's never been a problem.
Yeah, no, we try not to. We don't generally, and it's been hard in COVID actually, because we always made a rule that we wouldn't talk about work at home, so that we would have because I don't think it's appropriate or professional to do that. But obviously, because we're increasingly working from home, all the edges get a bit blurred. But no, it's a healthy. I think we've got a healthy culture. People who have left us or moved on have said, and then have come back to us saying that Oakley feels like a family. It does, as much as possible. It's hard when you, and that's why we've tried not to go beyond perhaps the north of England, I guess. If we started becoming much bigger, whether we lose that feel, I don't know. But what I really, and I pray a lot about this, I try to say is, what is it that we should be doing, Lord? And then I feel hopefully that the charity is being guided in some way. So we're not doing stuff for doing its sake, but that somehow that there's a need or a gap that we're trying to fill.
And thank you for sharing about the trust and all that you're doing as well. It sounds like an amazing charity, and my background is to do with MenCap as well. When I first left university, I started working for a local MenCap group and working with young people with learning disabilities. And the work, it's sometimes hard work, but amazingly life-giving work, I guess, when you're working with people who are often on the edges of society, I guess. And you seem to have expanded that work of the people on the edges, the people who are often dismissed or forgotten, outcast, and working particularly with those people. It seems like a very much that a calling that Jesus puts to all Christians to treat those people who are often outcast, who are often forgotten, to not forget, but actually to treat them as we would treat Christ. And I find that a fascinating thing that you're doing, and wonderful to see that faith in action in such a tangible way. And this is, I suppose it's about not judging, isn't it, Andrew? I think while we're on earth, we're not here to judge, are we? And I think a lot of the people that we support, by a lot of people, are judged by the way they look or the way they behave, or because they're not acting in a particular way. And I suppose what we're trying to do is to say, we all have gifts, and we do a lot of that in our work in terms of our staff. We say to them, the people you're working with, what gifts do they have? Even some of the people we support that have no communication or might only be able to blink an eye. It's really hard, but let's look at what gifts people have. And I think that's a line really from the scripture somewhere. It is, yeah.
As a unique human being made in the image of God, isn't it? And actually, what I was thinking when you were talking about it was, that this is the values of the kingdom of God. When Jesus said the kingdom of God is near, and then he read in, when he first started his ministry, he went into the temple and read from Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord God is on me, and he's anointed me to preach good news to the poor and to set the prisoners free and to, raise up the outcast and all of that. and all of that he modelled in his ministry, didn't he? He spent people that other people didn't have the time of day for.
Yeah.
People free.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, something that I think if we can support you, those people who might want to listen on the podcast and things, is there ways of being able to support what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for volunteers in so many different guises. We've got volunteers that range from people that are helping us with joinery in some projects where we've got furniture, to youth groups, to befriending elderly people that perhaps don't see anybody on a daily basis. There's a whole range of different gifts that people can bring to us that we would consider, most definitely. Yeah.
I think it's there's some really interesting stuff going on at the moment in our subsidiary company, Right to Work, which is a CIC charity, and what it's about. You said you work for MenCap. What it's about really is that letting people do things that anybody else can do, letting them have a go at everything they want to do, and we've started up a business within Right to Work, which is called Community Works, and that goes out and does what it does. It's almost like a little building firm. It goes out and helps people. It can help somebody in their own home who just need light bulbs changing, for instance. But on the other hand, it can also go out and it's just refurbished Appleby Football Club and things like that. And what it is we employ builders, but we also, people with learning disabilities or mental health issues go along and they also learn the trade, and they're part of the work group as well, which is really brilliant, works really well. But actually on the Right to Work board, because it's growing, we do need a couple of more volunteers on the board there. And what we're really after, a couple of people who have a bit of an entrepreneurial business mind, because we do a lot of things. We always like to sort of feel, whether we are or not, I think we are. We always like to be ahead of the curve, ahead of the game, and just sort of look for new opportunities that we can expand for the people we support. Be it, Appleby Hub and the cafe and the recycling stuff that we do and the collection of bulky waste that happens, and as I say, the community works. All of those things are all little businesses under the banner of Right to Work, and we want to grow that and expand that. So a couple of people that have a bit of spark around business and want to give us a bit of time, Alan Sugar, something like that, I don't know. But yeah, that would be really good. We are just about to put out some adverts to that. It is voluntary, but it's just fantastic stuff to get involved.
I'm glad you mentioned community works, actually, because that is something. It's like, for me, is a win-win-win, because you've got, for example, we've just been doing some outside classrooms for some primary schools in the Kendal area. So you've got, it's just amazing. You've got people perhaps that have got a mental health issue or learning disability that are really, may have low self-esteem. They're being equipped to learn new skills in an environment where you've got, young people that are excited about the adventure playground we've just built them. And it's just the dynamics is just really, really powerful. It's really, really good. So yeah, if we've got anybody that wants to join the board for Right to Work, that would be really, really good.
Well, there you are. We'll put some sort of contact details on it in the description to get in contact with Oakley Trust. And if anyone wants to do some volunteer work with yourselves, then get in contact. And it sounds like something where people can really, I think a lot of people find themselves wanting to help. People with faith and without faith often, wanting to do something that benefits the community, benefits people who are struggling or maybe in need in some way. And that often it's finding those opportunities and finding the right fit I guess, as well. And, Clive's saying people with entrepreneur skills, often might not think in this way, but actually these skills are helpful,
Exactly. We have a lot of people that have skills in softer skills like, education, health, those sort of things. But actually, sometimes you need somebody who's also can sort of think, right, okay, there's something we can develop here that would be really good. So, you do need that as well. You need a bit of a breadth.
It's a challenge that for the church as well, isn't it? I think the church as an organisation, if you like, was an establishment. We're probably full of really nice people, like you said, Clive. But sometimes you need somebody who'll say, well, how about doing a podcast? Or how about sometimes you do need to think out the box, don't you? And sometimes just that fresh input just gets people thinking, which is really healthy, I think.
I was going to say, I had a visit from some friends a week or so ago who've just come back to the UK from Malawi, and they've been out in Africa for quite a few years. And what they've been doing is helping local Christians to set up their own businesses. Partly for just to provide a living for them and to provide jobs for people in the community, which it's not just, I mean, that's, but also Christian mission work. So what's been happening with people who they can't afford to pay people to be full-time pastors or missionaries, but they work half time in the business and spend half their time running churches or sharing the gospel with people. And so they're providing them with the tools to actually be self-sustaining. They came back, were talking to me, and they're writing up now what they've learned over many years and they'll be able to share it with other people. And I said, I think that this is something which the church in the UK needs, as much as the people in Africa. And they said, oh, absolutely. And we think there's lots of transferable learning from what we've been doing. And it sounds, in some ways, not exactly the same, obviously, but quite similar to some of your thoughts on Oakley.
Yeah, there's lots of ways in which people can get involved with different charities and help. But I am wanting just to focus in a little bit about, I mean, Clive, you kind of said you felt almost led into this way of being. You wanted to be an architect, but you found yourself working in this sense. Is there something that you find? You've said as well that you feel as if there's it haven't really worked a day in your life as well. Is there something that really you find is life-giving in this particular role? And what is it, do you think, that gives you that sense of fulfillment, I guess?
That's a cracking question, that, to be quite honest. Let me think about that. I think the thing about this role that I do that gives the fulfillment, let's think, it's around individual stories. I have hundreds of them that I've seen happen along the way. And I remember when we first started Right to Work, I wasn't sure about it. There was a lot of people that were saying, oh, it'll never work. And then we sort of said, yeah, it's got to work. And one of the things we started with was I remember one of the first young men we worked with who had severe autism, and his family were very, very concerned. They were always told, it'll never amount to anything, can't do anything, blah. And this guy came to us as one of the first people we worked with. And what we didn't want to do, we didn't want to sort of get people jobs that were meaningless. And I'm not saying stacking trolleys and things like that is meaningless, because that's an important job to do. But with this guy, he had some fantastic skills that were really a gift to him as part of his autism, which was really the fact that and you've heard stories about this, but he was fabulous, absolutely fabulous mathematically. That he was unbelievable. But his social skills were appalling. Anyway, we got him a job. In the end, we got him a job after quite a bit of work with him. So it was kind of the first job placement. We now had hundreds, but his first job placement was in the tax office. That at that time was in Kendal, and he absolutely adored it. And the colleagues around him took a bit of adjusting for them, because they suddenly had this new colleague who actually wouldn't look at them in the face, but got his head down and did his work. But eventually, with everybody being supportive and us continuing to support him in the workplace, he became a real valued colleague. And one of his joys was actually going out for like a Christmas do with his workmates. I mean, this was just a step and a half for this guy. Fabulous. So those kind of things and those kind of stories that you get involved in, and that guy, made a fantastic job. And I'm going to tell you one more. And I know you know, but this one I love, which is a young man who's, when I first met him, he left long stay hospital. He came to us, and we were funded by the local authority to have 2 staff around him at all times, because this guy found it very difficult to go out and about in the community. He would lash out. So you needed 2 staff around him all the time. And whenever I used to meet him, he always used to shout expletives at me in a very aggressive way, because he saw me as a figure of authority, and so he hated me. But now he's gone through a journey now, and today he has a job, and his job is he's employed by Oakley, and he's a valued member of our staff. He now lives in his own self-contained flat. He still has support, but he has support to help him now and again with his meal times and all those sort of things. Now that doesn't sound fantastic, but for him, that is a fantastic journey. So he has his own place, he has his own job, he has his own mates, and he does his own thing. Now that was a guy that was locked up at one point. And, those are the things that are important, not the fact that we have a balance sheet, not that, it's the fact that those little things really, really help people. And that's good. I like that. I can do that. That's slightly better than being an architect,
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating that you're saying these stories, especially as I think in the last kind of couple of nights on BBC News, there's been some stories about some of the issues where people are being locked up because of their disabilities, and are being kept in rooms, which, it sounds horrific in this country. And the way in which, again, we talk about the forgotten people and the people who we want to kind of put on the sides of society who don't quite fit in. And yet, if we work at it, it sounds like you're doing this at the front line and doing an amazing job at it. If we work at it, if we really value people of whoever they are, whatever abilities they have, then we can see lives changed, and also our society changed for the better, not just in terms of acceptance of people, which is absolutely important, but also that saying, as Sue said, that the unwrapping of the gifts that they have to give to others. Really, really important stuff that you're doing. And again, I think a lot of people will be, really pleased to hear that kind of work is going on. Sue, just I'm going to go into the last kind of questions now, because we've been talking for over half an hour, but your role also goes, you have another role in Carlisle Diocese and also within the mission community. And do you want to just tell us a little bit about the role that you do in the diocese at the moment?
Yeah. Now, I'm going to be opening up here. I don't know how many people are going to be listening to this podcast. But probably about, would it be 10 years ago? Maybe more. I don't hear voices, but I had something come to mind. So it happened I wake up every morning, it happened 3 times. And the words were, take the heart out of the lion and put it into the mouth of the lamb. Now, if anybody out there can tell me what that means, I would be really chuffed. Because I remember saying to Clive, what on earth? It's not even words I would use. Take the heart out of the lion, put it into the mouth of the lamb. And I still don't know what it means. But what I wonder is, because I've increasingly got involved in perhaps some of the Church of England management, if you like, in terms of I'm now a director on the Diocesan Board of Finance. So that kind of oversees, not the mission, but oversees the finances of the organisation so that it can do its mission. And the more I get involved in those sort of things, I wonder, is this something about me trying to support a process that allows there to be more of a connection between the person in the pew or the Christian on the ground and what is this big unwieldy organisation where people wear strange robes and, high church, and I don't know, but I'm still trying to work it out. I still ask, please can you explain? But I find the role fascinating because it's a real insight into how the Church of England works. And of course, a lot of it is linked to very old statutes and traditions, etc. But what we're really excited about is with mission communities is that we're hoping that we can do things at a much more local level so that you get local ownership. And it isn't just about going to church on a Sunday, that there will be all sorts of different things that people can get involved with. And I think what I'd like to see is that we start doing things that are not perhaps traditional in terms of its, rather than just thinking I have to go to church on a Sunday, that there are other ways that you can experience the Holy Spirit, you can experience what God is trying to do and explain what we should be doing as Christians. So I think there's a lot more work to do, and there's a lot more questions and answers probably at the moment. But I look back and think maybe my role in the DBF and then the task group that's been looking at the impact that COVID has had on operations, etc. Maybe that's my little contribution that I've been asked to put in. I don't know, but if anybody can give me the translation of, I'd be really impressed.
I think that, isn't it? So yeah. I'm just wondering, what have you seen some good examples of? Not just it being about going to church on Sunday, but Holy Spirit is doing in other times.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's all sorts of different ways, isn't there, that you can. I think it's about trying to get. It's not about trying to convert people necessarily, but it's about wanting to open the eyes of people that perhaps are non-believers to understand what the message is and what the good news is. And I think because we all live in very, very busy world, life increasingly is becoming quite materialistic, self-centered, and so where we can provide alternatives for people to so they see something and think, oh, like Christians are doing that. Wow, I wouldn't have thought that was, because if you ask, I think most people in the street, describe a Christian, it would be really interesting to, I would imagine most of the viewpoint is that, busybodies, do-gooders, probably quite old. So it's trying to connect with younger people and those that perhaps have not yet come to faith. And it's a challenge, but I think that we can work towards that.
Well, thank you both, Sue and Clive, and I think that's probably a great place to end. And I know, Clive, you'll have to go to another meeting soon, but I'm really grateful for you being able to share with us in this podcast and just giving your time for us. And I hope those people who are listening will be able to reflect, as we probably will, myself, Christian, and Dan as well, in a little bit later, about how big an impact that is having on our area and how we can support that as local communities and our churches, and I see that incredible glimpse of the kingdom that you're doing, that incredible glimpse of people all being together, equally seen and equally treated, no matter who you are. And that message, I think, is an inspiring one for us to hear. So thank you. Continue the good work that you're doing, and God bless to you both.
Thank you. It's been really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got Dan and Christy again. We're together again, and we are meeting 2 weeks after that conversation took place. For various reasons, I went on holiday, and we've been just trying to find some time to meet together. And we've just listened to the conversation back, and I just wonder what are your thoughts that are coming out of that, Dan and Christy?
Well, one of the things that sort of grew as just listening to their story, and particularly for Clive, was it just reminded me a little bit of the story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, where God said to Philip, "I want you to go on this road to a particular place." And my kind of feeling of that is that Philip thought, well, I'm going to that place. And yet on the road, he meets somebody. He has a real effect on that person's life. And then he ends up going somewhere completely different. He never gets to the place where he thought he was going to be going. Now, that's been my experience as well. So I hope I'm not just reading this over Clive's experience. But there's this sense of like, for me, it comes out like it's a vocation for Clive, what he's doing. And because when he sort of said, well, I don't really see it as a job, it's more of a life kind of thing. You know, it just made me feel that you're in absolutely the right place, doing absolutely the right thing. And it's being really, really fruitful, and to relax into that, which he has, you know. So that's really good. And I think also because sometimes, you know, when you get to a certain age, you're nearly there, Andrew, but not yet. When you get to a certain age, the midlife crisis thing hits in. What have I done with my life? I thought it was going to be this, but I've ended up doing that. Actually, I think that's very helpful for a lot of people, that you've ended up doing probably what is your vocation, what you're called to do. And whether you know it or not, you know, God's involved in all of that. So whether it is, you know, working on the tills, or whether it is an electrician, plumber, Centre Parks, leading a charity, you know, there's a path, there's a vocation, and that God's involved in it. And I think that's really helpful, I think, for people to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I was struck by that phrase that he says he hasn't worked a day in his life. I mean, I'm not sure how many people could say that, you know. It's a great thing to be able to say, and I think often to do with an attitude as well, that people will be able to foster it and make a part of their lives, that they enjoy what they do. But as I've been kind of, I guess, over the last 6-7 months, been reflecting on what Sabbath is, what it is to rest as well in the midst of this time where people, I guess, have been furloughed, kind of job anxieties are up and things. There is a sense of being content in where you are, in what you're doing, and that it is something that gives you life in what, you know, and whatever he's found himself doing. It does seem as if that he's found a way for it to really be a way, you know, seeing that this is really helpful for him to live, and to live life in its fullness. And I think that's a great attitude.
Yeah. I think you've probably gone far further in the looking at the Sabbath thing than I have, but I've been thinking about that a little bit recently as well, and how, yes, rest in itself is important. Actually, stopping is important, but also, you know, God promises a Sabbath rest, and there is that sense that rest is about trusting God. It's about trusting that, you know, that if you're following God's path, that he gives you rest in that. And Jesus said, "Come to me, all you are weary, take my yoke upon you." You know, so when we're in line with what God wants us to do, then that is rest, because we trust God. And the other thing that really struck me, just listening again with what Clive said, was that when he said about that he has, you know, the big problems come to him, but he doesn't worry about them. and he often sleeps on them. I mean, he might wake in the night, but he knows that the solution will come. And there's a trust there, whether it's a trust in God or whether it's a trust in his ability. It may be a little bit of both, but there is a trust that that the solution will come. And I think I've got something to learn from that, because I'm someone who will worry when there's a problem and be thinking, oh, what's the answer? And it's only when I actually realise, well, I need to ask God for the answer and then wait. And normally the answer does come in the end.
And if we're not used to doing things like that, it can sound like a very strange thing to do, to ask God and to wait for something to happen. Yeah. And you might feel as if nothing's going to happen, or worry that this whole thing's just a complete waste of time. Just get on with it ourselves. And I know I'm tempted to do that a lot. That idea of being able to trust, and what that means, what that looks like, isn't always the easiest thing to figure out when you're in the midst of a situation. I think it's often when you're looking back at the situations where we see God working often. Yes. When we're in the midst of it, we often see everything that's kind of stopping us from seeing God, really. We want to see the immediate issues, the situations that's in front of us, and almost, want to say, God, you stay over there, rather than being able to have a sense of the Spirit being in the midst of it all.
I think with the Sabbath thing as well, and taking breaks and what have you, I thought it was really interesting when they were saying that we work together, but we've made this rule not to talk about work at home, so there is a break. That obviously Clive is thinking about stuff and running over stuff, and Sue probably as well, but at home you don't discuss it, and so it has been quite difficult, with the lockdown and with having to work from home. And I'm just thinking what that says about, for some folk, you can't leave it at home, and so
or at work.
So you can't leave it at work. Yeah, sorry, because you work from home, and I'm thinking of yourself and other Christian ministers as well, and maybe people hearing this to understand that actually. Protect or think about the people who minister to you in a church context, because they're working from home. They can't have that same sort of break. When I go off to work at Centre Parks at security, when I get in the car and leave the site, that's it. I can leave it behind. I might come home and say to Chris, "Oh, you won't believe what happened," but but it's a different thing. It's gone now. I can forget about it. Yeah. And so it is different, and not just obviously for Christian ministers, but anyone who works from home. The phone goes, desperate for work, and you're on tenterhooks all the time. So that's kind of something to sort of maybe think about as well. How can we support one another in that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, it's kind of a running thing in our household that I don't tell Amy what's going on. And so people will ask Amy what's happening with this or that, presuming that the minister's wife will know what's going on, and she hasn't got a clue. And often she's been told what I'm doing by someone else in the church or something, and she doesn't realise a thing, really. And I don't think that's intentional. It's more than the fact that I just, sometimes I just want to, I do automatically want to have that separated sometimes. Not to say that they don't obviously interact and come together at times, but I don't want to always be talking about church in some ways. It sounds horrible in the middle of a church podcast or a mission community podcast, but it is a case of having that space is important.
Having some boundaries in your life, isn't it? I mean, as a couple who've been in ministry, we were kind of a hybrid, really, I think, because I think some of the times, yes, it does feel like personal life and ministry life are all just kind of entwined, and it's very difficult to make a separation between the two. But other times, yeah, we need the time just to kind of talk about something else, or just to talk about nothing and watch the TV or spend time with the kids. And so we don't always communicate everything either, even though we're both in ministries. There would be times we've had similar situations when people have assumed that one of us knew something just because the other one did.
That's it, yeah. And I mean, it's interesting that we've gone down this route after all of the things that they've been talking about. Really, it's been fascinating to hear about all the work that they're doing and the way in which they're working with people who, as we've already said, are often seen to be on the margins of society. But it's interesting that actually we've noticed this to be the thing we want to talk about. And of course, a lot of what's been said on that side of things has been said in the conversations we had with Sue and Clive. But I think it's been a helpful thing for us to think about, and I hope that whoever's listening to the podcast will also find this helpful. We're sorry it was a little bit longer than we thought it was going to be. We're going to try our best to get better at this podcasting thing over the next few weeks. We've had a little bit of conversation about that, and whether it's about asking more clear questions or being a little bit more stern on the time. We'll try and make it so that we have a something that's listenable to. So if you managed to get to this point, bravo, well done. And we hope that you'll join us again for the next podcasts as well. We've got some interesting people lined up, I think, as we've been talking, so it should be good. Is there anything else you want to add, Dan, Christy?
No, I don't think so. I think you said it all very well.
But I think that conversation though was fascinating. There's so much in it, and it comes out of people's real experience, and that's what's so important, I think.
Yeah, this isn't like the church telling someone what to say. This is about people's lives, and that's all we're listening to. It's not about saying this is right or wrong or whatever. We just want to hear people's stories and seeing how God seems to work through it in our imperfectness, in our sometimes confusedness, whatever it might be. And this is just to encourage us all and hear people's testimonies. So thank you for joining me again, and having been able to have these conversations is great, isn't it? And we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.